Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to learn something about the objects. So there is a concept of object oriented programming in JavaScript. So in case of object oriented programming, we have some things which are called as objects. Now the object oriented programming concept has been introduced in order to make writing JavaScript code more efficient and easy. But the thing is that understanding the concept of object is a bit tricky and it takes some time to understand what an object is. So in this tutorial, what we are going to do is that we are going to go through the concept of objects, how they are used, what are the properties of objects, and what are the methods of object. So in order to understand objects better, let's take an example of object in real life. So for example, you could consider any object, but in this case, let's consider the object to be a person. So let's say we have an object and that object is nothing but a person. So an object has some properties and it has some methods. So the properties of object are nothing but the attributes of the object. So for example, if we are talking about person, then the properties of the person would be the name of the person, the age of the person, weight of the person, let's say the height of the person. So all these attributes of a person are nothing but they are called as the properties of an object, and in this case they are called as the properties of a person. So now let's move on to the next part, which is nothing but the methods. Now when we talk about methods of an object, so the methods are nothing but the actions or the things which this object could perform or which this object can do. So the methods are nothing but what things could the object do or what things could the object perform. So for example, when we talk about a person in general case, so a person could, let's say, drive a car, he could eat food, he could sleep, and all other sorts of activity which a person could do. So this is the basic concept of an object. So an object has the properties and it has methods. So in order to understand objects in a better way, we have taken the example of person as an object, and the properties of the person are nothing but name, age, weight, and height, and there could be many properties. And now then we move on to the next concept, which is the methods. So methods are nothing but the kind of things which the object could do or the kind of things the object could perform. So in this case, a person could drive a car, he could eat food, he could sleep, or he could do a various set of activities. So this is the real life example of an object. Now if we talk about objects in programming or specifically in JavaScript, those objects also have some properties and they have some methods. Now in this tutorial we are going to only go through the inbuilt objects in JavaScript, and in the next tutorial we are going to actually create some objects on our own. So if you want to take an example of an inbuilt object in JavaScript, the variable which we use is also an object. So let's say you create a variable, let's name it as x, and let's give it some value. Let's say this is a variable, this should be v. So this is a variable x. Let's say we have this value stored in the variable x. Now this variable x is nothing but it is an object, and if you want to access the properties of this object x, so the property, one of the property of a variable is nothing but the length. So for example, if you want to calculate the length, that is, if you want to calculate the number of characters which are stored in x, you just go ahead and use the method which kind of shows you the length of the object. So the length of the object is nothing but it's one of its property. So in order to display the length of the object, we go ahead and type document.write, and then as we want to access the length of the object, we use the object name. So the object name is x, that is the variable name. So in order to access the length of the variable x, we give a dot operator and then we type length. So once we have this code with us, we save it, and as you could see, so it is giving us the value of the length of the object. So in this case our object was x, and one of the properties of this inbuilt object is length. So in order to access length, we have used a dot operator. So a dot operator is basically used in order to access any property of an object. So we have simply printed out the length by using document.write, and then in the parameters we have specified x.length. So x.length is basically going to give us the length of the object. So that's what objects are, and that's the concept of object-oriented programming in JavaScript. So in this tutorial, we have studied about the inbuilt objects. So we have studied about the inbuilt object, which is variable. But in the next tutorial, we are going to create our own object. So that's it for this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.